My name is Orla Godhealth, and I am a fifth-year PhD student in mechanical engineering and the co-lead of the Diversity and Inclusivity Alliance, which I will refer to as the D&I Alliance moving forward. There is a high probability that a orange and white cat named Teddy will join me during this presentation, as he is both deeply committed to the Alliance and being held like a baby. I feel that in DI spaces and talks, it's important to be upfront with my identity so that folks can understand the lens in which I am approaching DEI work. I am a white, queer, able-bodied engineer, and I continue to learn about intersectionality and the systems that cause oppression to minority people. I wanted to start with a land acknowledgement. This is adapted from the Department of Soil, Water, and Climate and information from landgrabu.org. The University of Minnesota is located on traditional, ancestral, and contemporary lands of Indigenous people. The Dakota people, along with the Ojibwe people, are the Indigenous peoples of the land now called Minnesota. The University of Minnesota was founded in the belief that all people are enriched by understanding, is dedicated to the advancement of learning and the search for truth, to the sharing of this knowledge through education for a diverse community. And so the application of this knowledge should benefit the people, the state, the nation, and the world. But because of colonialism and racism, Native knowledge and traditional practices have not been widely recognized by academic gatekeepers, including here. The University of Minnesota is a land-grant university, and as such, we have benefited from the cession of land by the federal government for the creation of the university. The 52 land-grant universities have seized nearly 11 million acres of Indigenous land from 250 tribes, bands, and community through 160 violence-backed treaties and land seizures. Our university is not just built on Indigenous land, but with Indigenous land. It is important to recognize our existence as a university as a direct result of violence against Indigenous people. We must recognize that words are not enough and that we must take action to recognize, support, and advocate for Indigenous people. By offering this acknowledgement, we affirm tribal sovereignty and will work to hold the university accountable to Indigenous peoples and nations. We're going to start our presentation with the D&I moment, and it's going to be a meta moment about why and how we do DI moments. And Miriam, Iman, and Rhonda will be leading this little segment. You three, I have control of the presentation, so whenever you need to change slides, just let me know.
Yeah, I think I'll, hi everyone, I'm Miriam, and I'll lead us off, but Lindsay or Iman or Rhonda, please chime in if I forget anything. Or we wanted to, share a little bit with the group about D&I moments and why and how to do them, and take this as just a couple minutes here at the beginning of our meeting as an example of a D&I moment itself. So yeah, I think go ahead to the next slide. So what are D&I moments? These are brief little presentations at the beginning of a meeting or an event or something that we do, and they're short and they're frequent. So the idea is that there can be lots of different quick topics, and they happen often. And it could be, for example, 1 minute at the beginning of a weekly meeting, or a couple of slides before a lecture. And this allows a variety of topics to be discussed, and it normalizes talking about these things. It's informative and or thought-provoking. The idea is not to give a thorough or complete picture of the topic, but it's like just a taste, and hopefully it can spark more learning and discussion later on. It's a shared responsibility, meaning it should not be the same person doing the D&I moment at every activity or event. It's something that people should take turns. It's a contributor to cultural shift, is part of why it's designed this way, and I'll talk more about that on the next slide. And importantly, it's different for every group. If you want to start doing these, you can figure out what works well for the context that you're in. So it could be, for example, 1 slide in 1 minute, or it could be no slides. It could be a 5-minute presentation with a discussion. It could be, watch a YouTube video together and then talk about it. So whatever is going to work for the group is part of what's built into this. Next slide, please. So the other thing is this cultural shift piece. So we do them often and lots of different topics and kind of build it into the general practice of our meetings. And this is in order to contribute to an overall cultural shift where we get comfortable talking about uncomfortable things sometimes, including diversity, equity, inclusion, wellness, belonging, respect. It's everybody's responsibility to think about these things on a regular basis and talk about them and get comfortable with learning and sometimes making mistakes. And I love to, because I'm based in the chemistry department, I love to use the example of safety moments in chemistry departments. So the University of Minnesota was kind of a leader in starting some of these things, certainly not the only ones. But they many years ago started doing safety moments at the beginnings of many meetings throughout the whole department. And it would be like a couple slides, just a minute or two, talking about some safety concept. And the idea was safety is something that everybody should be thinking about all the time, not only when there's emergency or not only when there's an accident and somebody gets hurt. It should be just always something you think about and learn about. And this is a nice analogy to these D&I moments. Next slide. So how you've decided you want to do a D&I moment, how do you do that? You can leverage your own power and influence, whatever that is, whatever your role is. If you're a student, faculty member, staff, we all have areas where we can have some influence. Maybe you're a student who's presenting a group meeting, or you're a department head who runs, sets agendas for many committees or something. You can suggest trying to implement some of these D&I moments. Just think about, where your spheres of influence are. It's good to remember to be flexible on the venues and formats where you're going to use them, and you can try it out. It might not work the first way you try it, and then you can adapt. The next thing, of course, is picking your topic, and there's like infinite possibilities. When you do these on a regular basis, you start to see how many different things that you can grab to launch these conversations. The nice thing is there's resources for you to do that. You don't have to pick something off the top of your head. At this website, cse.umn.edu/alliance, there are a lot of resources, including a little library of example slides and a form for sharing your own. If you make your own examples, you can submit them there for others to see. There's also a guidelines document from the American Chemical Society with lots of great suggestions about, I think they call them inclusivity moments or something like that. And there's even a slide template if you wanted to do that. So lots of hopefully fairly easy on-ramp to giving these a try. And for the end of this little meta moment, we're actually going to present you with an example of a moment that you might use in a meeting or something. And I'll turn it over to Iman to present that. You can go to the next slide.
Hi, everyone. I'm Iman. I'm a PhD candidate at the Department of Computer Science. So speaking of culture, we actually wanted to share this D&I moment with you. It was an article that was published in Forbes, and it basically talks about a scientific study of the impact of changing culture on topics such as the D&I moments. So basically, this article talks about that intentions are good, but they are not enough. We actually need to have daily habits in order to feel, and systems in order to feel that there is an actual change that's happening by practicing this. They also gave an example of how we can do this in an HR system to remove bias. For example, you can just eliminate the names or the specific characters of a specific person who applies for a position in order to choose who actually gets an interview and who not. And also, I would like to speak about what we have adopted in computer science. So I believe the first one who actually used the D&I moments in our department was the staff in their meetings. And I'm pretty sure it has impacted how they actually interact with the students in the department based on the things that they learn about the different cultures and backgrounds and so on. The second part, we actually used a different sort. Instead of just starting with a meeting, we just send a slide on the grads mailing list on a specific day and time every week, let's say just a Monday. Then you get a slide on your email with a short description of what this moment is about. The students can just open this slide and then learn something new. And we have received great feedback from it, either from the students directly or from their faculty when they actually discuss these topics with them. And then we recently adapted this in our faculty meetings. Maybe there was some concern at the beginning, how long it will take and so on, but definitely it has also great impact and inspired discussions for topics that were not on the agenda among these meetings before. So you can just start by doing these different things. You can, as we just said, you can just start with your own circle, and then this will impact on the long run of having a better understanding of the different cultures, different people around you, and then definitely making us a better humans overall. So yeah, I think with that, we'll just move on. Thank you.
Thank you for that DEI meta moment. So the next thing is I wanted to give a brief overview of the Alliance itself. So we have 600 champions. And as you can see in this wheel-looking diagram, we have 600 champions, and then a selection of those champions work with our five different action groups. So we have educational, professional development, student experience, funding, communications, and faculty, staff, and postdoc. Any champion can decide to work with any of these five groups. I believe there is a form on our website, which I will show at the end of this presentation, where you can just say, hey, I'm interested in working with this group, and it'll get you connected with them. And then from those five groups, a smaller pool is part of the lead team, which you can see on the right, and they help at the highest level of the Alliance, kind of just work on planning stuff out and helping have a plan for moving forward. With our Alliance membership, we accept everyone in the university and in the college. So we have undergrad students, graduate, faculty, staff and administration, and postdoc. And if you look on the right in this constellation, you can see that every department has undergraduate students, graduate students, faculty, and staff and administration involved as champions in the Alliance. And the only thing that's missing is 4 departments don't have postdocs as part of the Alliance. We're very proud of being able to bring in all of these different people and be able to engage with such a wide audience. With that, I would like to introduce Michelle. Michelle won the CSE Impact Award, which recognizes a CSE undergraduate student who has made a lasting impact in a pursuit of a more diverse, equitable, and inclusive climate within the College of Science and Engineering. Michelle is recognized as a student committed to making the university better through close engagement with their department's DEI work group to make the department more welcoming to women and people of color. Michelle has organized workshops to confront anti-Asian racism, assisted in creating an emergency fund for students in their department, and is always willing to lend a helpful hand to support others. Michelle is identified as courageous, brave, and unwavering in her desire to ensure an inclusive and welcoming environment. So with that, Michelle, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you so much for that kind introduction. Hi, everyone. My name is Michelle. As previously stated, I was very honored to receive the CSE Impact Award last year, and I'm a 4th year pursuing a double major in chemical engineering and material science. It's a great honor to be able to speak with everyone today, and I wanted to talk a little bit about my journey here at the U and specifically about what DEI work means to me personally. In the summer of 2019, before my first year even started here, I emailed a very meticulously crafted 4-year plan to my undergrad advisor because I knew exactly what I wanted to do. I wanted to get my double major in 4 years instead of 5 and take that double major and go to grad school. I thought I knew how to make myself the perfect applicant. So I had challenging coursework, I had extracurricular involvement, and I knew I needed to get into a lab and get some skills. I ordered all of my prerequisites really precisely, and I even scouted out for which labs I wanted to join. I went so far as to look at all of the professors in my department and figure out exactly which faculty recommendation letters I needed to get in order to get into grad school. I thought I accounted for everything I needed to be the perfect student. And yet, even the best of my planning couldn't have foreseen the pandemic. As we know from that familiar email send-off, these are very unprecedented times. And after spring break of my first year, I was moved out of the dorms and I went back home. It was really great to see my family again, but the disruptions of everything really messed with my grades. I made it through the semester, but the grades weren't great, and I just chalked it up to a one-time thing. I swore it was just a blip in my transcript and it would all go up from there. Little did I know it was just the beginning. We went fully online my sophomore year and it got worse. I can't attribute academic woes to just one particular incident that year, but rather a combination of many smaller things that combined became almost unbearable. I was so scared of getting sick. I was lonely without my classmates, and I felt really disconnected from everyone in my real life. I tried to stay informed, but that also meant I was chronically online, trying to find some optimistic news about vaccines. But in reality, I just kept seeing article after article about hate and violence against my community, which gained increasing visibility as the pandemic wore on. It's hard to focus on coursework when you feel like you have a target on your back every time you go outside. And I just couldn't focus on anything. And that inability to focus trickled down and impacted my academic performance. So I started to doubt myself. And without the strong connections within my major, because all of our classes were online, I started to feel like I was some type of imposter, like I had infiltrated the Department of Chemical Engineering and Material Science and convinced everyone that I was smart enough to be there, but I really wasn't. I started to feel like I didn't belong in my classes or my major or college in general. And with everything going on, suddenly it didn't even feel like such a big priority to keep fighting for it. The only way I could channel all of my feelings and make myself feel better was to do something that mattered to me and speak on issues like anti-Asian violence. My department was incredibly supportive and allowed me to organize, moderate, and be the keynote speaker for a seminar about combating anti-Asian violence. While the preparation for the seminar weighed heavily on me, as I needed to consume media describing the discrimination and violence against people who look just like me, I knew the work was important. I presented to nearly 70 people, and I received many messages from Asian students, both graduate and undergraduate, after the event, who found comfort in seeing the department supporting something that was impacting us so heavily. It is sometimes just the acknowledgement that some higher power, whether it's the department or the college, sees what you're going through and understands that it's impacting your academic performance, that helps students in these situations feel like somebody else recognizes something else is happening and you don't start to feel like you are the problem itself. Since then, I've been able to do a lot more work with my department to create a more inclusive environment, and groups like the CSE DNI Alliance are incredibly important because they demonstrate that the College of Science and Engineering not only recognizes systemic inequalities in higher education, but is working to address it. While students like myself can play a large part in shifting the culture of an institution towards inclusivity, we can't do it alone. Students are transients in the university space, staying for only a handful of years. But lasting change also requires the support of people who are more so fixtures in their departments and organizations, and who thus have more power to make changes. Take it from me, a student who both does diversity work and benefits from it. We notice when changes occur, and we really value when people in leadership roles actually care about making positive changes. Honestly, I don't think I would have made it through that second year if I hadn't had faculty support and a department willing to look into hosting DEI-centric events. Faculty are really integral in determining how students feel about a certain subject, but even more so, seeing representation of yourself in those faculties or within departments helps people feel like they do belong in a field like science. My ambition eventually is to become a faculty member because I want to be the person I would have wanted when times got hard for me. Think about it. Despite knowing that my major was exactly what I wanted to do, I was almost driven to a point where I could no longer continue because I felt like I wasn't cut out for STEM. I'm sure this is the case for so many other students who also balance their academic concerns with so many other factors in their lives. In the larger view of why DEI work matters, I encourage people to think about the talented students we lose if the system doesn't improve. I've developed so many skills in these past 4 years, and I can confidently say that I will do everything in my power to make positive changes to the world. And yet, I was almost one of the students lost to the chaos of a situation that was outside of my control. There are many students who balance more stressful situations than I have ever known or could even imagine. And it's an incredible loss to not only the College of Science and Engineering, but also the university and wider parts of society to see students with so much talent feel as if they cannot continue and be driven out for reasons that are not their fault. Although DEI work doesn't erase all the outside factors that students face, it can help ease that burden. That acknowledgement alone is incredibly important because showing students that they are in an environment that supports them, it makes it feel like a mistake or a setback is no longer the catastrophic end to their scientific career, but rather something that they can recover from and move on. In any practical application, you try and design by accounting for potential deviations from ideal conditions. In chemical engineering, that means that I'm designing to a worst case scenario because it's unrealistic to assume that conditions will always be exactly what you specified. This is kind of the approach we need to take with regards to students in designing higher education. We must make a system that accommodates for students who deviate from the traditional path and do so because of external circumstances. And with this stronger support, students like me won't feel like they need to be perfect in order to be a scientist or engineer. I'm very happy to see all the work that CSE has done in order to improve the retention and recruitment of students from a variety of backgrounds, as well as the initiatives to improve student mental health. And I'm incredibly hopeful that this momentum continues. This work is worth it. And I'm proud to see that it's being supported here at the U. With that, thank you all so much for listening, and I look forward to seeing what the future holds.
Thank you so much, Rochelle, for agreeing to talk with us today and giving that lovely speech. Next, if I can change my slide, next I would like to introduce CSE Dean Andrew Aline, who will be giving a little bit of talk about his perspective of DEI work in the college.
Is it okay to share screens? Orla, thank you very much for the intro.
Yeah, I believe you should be able to.
Awesome. Thanks. And thanks everybody for attending. This is really, I'm trying to do two things at once, sorry. Great meeting, and one of two that I've been at today. And by the way, Michelle, thank you very much for your talk just now. It was great meeting you yesterday with all the other SESB students. Michelle sort of made and Hunter really kind of made a point of pushing on some of the efforts and you know, very engaged and interested in the things that we were doing. And there have already been some follow-ups. I've seen some emails go back and forth on my side today. But the other thing that's really cool, if you're not aware of it, and if any of you are on campus, there's the IEM Inspire event going on today as well. This is where they bring in, it filled the McNamara big room for underrepresented high school students, 10th through 12th grade. Trying to inspire them in sort of being involved in STEM and medicine, and they have a wonderful lineup of speakers, and it's fascinating. So the kinds of activities that go on, I think, are tremendous here. This also being part of it, and what I wanted to do. It's funny, I did not actually plan this, but there is a DEI moment that I incorporated, and it's really great that Miriam brought that up earlier, because I didn't know there was a template, so I didn't use the template. Sorry, I did it on my own. One of the things that I often, as a decision maker, I like to use information to make decisions, and around the topic of inclusivity, many times the conversations focus on identity, and it's hard to scale that as a decision maker across a large organization. If it's a small organization, you can do them one by one. So across a large organization, if any of you are in a position where you are able to do this, and I hope Michelle someday will be in one of those positions. It's really interesting to know how you could identify or monitor inclusivity. It tends to, when you put that word out there, it tends to mean different things to different people. A really good start that I found, there's several, but here's one that came out last year in the Harvard Business Review. And they reference, actually, the HBR didn't do the creation of it themselves. There's a firm called Gartner, and they do a lot of surveys. They try and tend to come up with, if anybody's heard of the Gartner Hype Index, or they do a lot of surveys and try and take the pulse of various different aspects of society. And they came up with a really interesting index. They were one of the first, or not first, one of the better ones I've seen that quantify sort of inclusivity using what they call this Gartner Inclusion Index. And it's 7 points, and usually most efforts or activities within organizations, companies, the government, universities, churches, whatever, tend to boil down along these axes, and we can go through them. The first one is fair treatment. Does everybody feel like if they're working towards the organization's strategic objectives, does that get recognized and rewarded fairly, which is different. I mean, it has to align with the organization's strategic objectives. I think where people sometimes may, and this is part of the conversation, they have to make sure the objectives are aligned with those of the institution. Whether or not different opinions are valued. All opinions get valued, not just a certain set. Whether or not when it comes time to make decisions, people feel that they're heard, not necessarily agreed with. If somebody doesn't agree with me or the decision doesn't go my way, but I feel that I was heard, I still feel included in the decision-making process. And not everybody is always going to, not every idea can be agreed to, particularly if you have different ways of going through things. And you can, express your true feelings. This is what I think. And people can say, okay, I disagree with you, and you still feel safe. Or I agree with you, and you still feel safe. That's that psychological safety. And you can also have open and honest conversations. People can say things that might make you feel uncomfortable, disagree with, but you can still express those, and you can work through those to achieve, again, an organization's strategic objectives. And a feeling that I belong here. Michelle was sort of talking about the imposter syndrome. This is a big part of it. You feel like you belong. You belong in this organization, and others in the organization actively let you know that you belong. You're part of the team. And then the last piece is the representation piece. That people in upper levels tend to reflect the folks across the organization. And one of the things that you can do is typically what they'll do is they'll put this on a Likert scale. So that's like when you see the surveys, 1 to 5, agree, disagree, strongly disagree, whatever. And use that along these to try and figure out where in your organization tend to be more, do better on this index, and where you tend to not do as good. And it's really valuable to use that information then to tailor some of your decisions to focus the efforts and energy on those where you maybe you focus them on the ones where you're doing really well and you want to sort of maintain that. Or you focus on the ones that are not doing as well and you want to fix that. And that's sort of like a strategic decision at a leadership level. So this is a tool that I found to be relatively useful. And they did a good job of packaging it up. So, that would be my D&I moment. There's a tool that's available people can put in their toolbox that can help in their organizations. And you can use this in a lab group if you want. You can use this in a department if you want. You can use this at a college or university, whatever. It's relatively scalable. That was a little longer than a minute. I thought it would be good today to do 3 things. Okay. First, give a little bit of an introduction. Some of you I know, some of you I don't. Talk a little bit about express gratitude to the D&I Alliance for the work done to date. And then talk a little bit about some of the efforts at the college, what we're doing sort of in this general space. in terms of coordination and partnerships. So first, who am I? My name's Andrew Lean, for those of you who haven't met. Grew up in the Caribbean. I grew up in Jamaica. I was there until high school, and then emigrated. So I'm an immigrant. Sorry, I should say that up front. I am an immigrant. Immigrated to the Washington, D.C. area. Had parents who were really stressed, both education and educational excellence as a core, as well as sort of a broad tent, an inclusive, broad, very diverse approach. So diversity, inclusivity for me has sort of like a personal bent to it, as it is with many of you. I mean, if you're to see a photograph of my family, my extended family, it's from all over the world. Cousins in Africa, aunts from Pakistan and Netherlands. And it's a very rich. Grandfather, for those of you who don't know, is from Guangzhou, China. It's all over the world. And one of the things that we realized is when we get together, and we'd get together fairly often, everybody was included, everybody was a part of it, and you could have a great time, even if you had differences in where you came from. And so the idea of excellence in your organization and sort of an inclusive, diverse culture is something that has been ingrained ever since I was a little kid. Had a very strong role models. My mom was a head of her department in a university. And so, that diversity and inclusivity and sort of extends definitely to gender balance. That's why I put a lot of efforts in that area in the past. Went to college on the East Coast of New Jersey, went to Princeton. Did my graduate work out at Berkeley in California. And then I spent about 27 and a half years at the University of Illinois, working in different roles of academic leadership, as well as sort of university leadership, academic leadership being like in my broader technical communities. And then had a change of heart and decided to see what it would be like to lead an organization that was a little bit larger than the organization I was leading before, and was fortunate enough to be given a wonderful opportunity to do that here at the University of Minnesota. And so I've been here since January, and a lot of what I've been doing is sort of listening and learning, trying to find out a little bit more about what's going on. And one of the things that was brought to my attention relatively early was the efforts by the Alliance, and what the Alliance was doing, how it started. I was trying to learn more and more about it, how it originated, and Edgar's educated me on this as well as others, and where it's going, what's its goal. That was one of the things that I was trying to figure out. It was initiated. What does an end game look like, right? And as I sort of been doing a little bit more of this digging, I think one of the things that the Alliance has done an outstanding job of, and I really appreciate that, and I thank them for, is this idea of building a community of, as was shown on the Pentagon, varying levels of or stakeholders, students, some postdocs, maybe not every department, faculty, to staff, that do a lot to make everybody in that community feel like they belong. And that is actually very, very valuable. As Michelle was saying, if you don't have a community, that you can walk into and feel like you belong, it's very easy to get discouraged. Creating a community such like this, and as I sort of dove into it a little bit more, I realized there's a larger community, but there's also multiple sub communities within that community. That is also very, very valuable for people to find a sense of belonging. So I really want to thank the Alliance for that work to date, and really encourage them to see how they can move forward in that space in terms of building community. I love the event that you had in the spring where we brought the multiple communities together. Again, that's a really important part. A 600 person strong community is a good place for people to find themselves and find support. And so I think that would be very, very valuable to maintain. Now, switching a little bit to efforts going on at the college, we have a lot of efforts going on at the college in the general space. And I should just start. We've expanded our student services. I've invested a fair bit of money trying to make sure that there are appropriate student services that can help the undergraduates. And Michelle heard a bunch of this yesterday. We have adjusted some of our hiring efforts in the faculty space. Typically in the faculty space, you say, I want somebody that does inorganic chemistry. Or maybe, specifically, I want somebody that does catalysis. And then you go out and look for a person in that space. What we did this year is we said, okay, fine. We actually relaxed that a little bit, allowed people to look across multiple years rather than stand up a search each year and stand it back down. That allows you to broaden the pool a little bit, so you can bring additional people in. In addition, what I did was I held back 4 positions, right? I said, okay, across all departments now, these are up for grabs. So, and we're looking for the best people that we can find. They're going to add to our community here in the college. And that was done sort of strategically. If you make it sort of open, right, and you make it that the departments, it's an incentive for people to go after. Then people tend to put their best foot forward and really press hard to find candidates that will take advantage of those resources, because they know if they don't, somebody else will. We'll see how that plays out, but that is going to be actually a significant investment in trying to diversify the faculty here. I was just running the numbers after discussing with Michelle, and it's going to be a mid 7-figure investment. Not quite 8, but a mid 7-figure investment. And so you talk about putting your money where your mouth is. That's a lot of money we're going to be putting where our mouth is. The other thing that we did, and there's several other efforts. I know you have to get to your own things. That was really key. Is in sort of the D&I or the DEI space. There are many different aspects to this. One of the things that we did at the college level, they're not, don't want to go ahead and stop any of the programs that are going on at the grassroots level. But we decided to focus on that inclusion piece, like I was talking about in the Gartner Index. And we set up a task force. It had multiple purposes, but we called it Mission Inclusion. The outcome of that task force, and this was great. If you've ever been on a university committee, right, those tend to drag on sometimes. This was, we're going to have a plan, right, and we're going to do it in 7 meetings. That's it. That's all you got. You got to deliver a plan that's executable at the end of those 7 meetings. This is unique. Moreover, we had 2 CTOs from major companies, Cargill and Medtronic, that were sitting on this committee, and we kept it focused and small so we could move quickly and come up with a plan. Plan that they came up with, I think Rhonda posted it on the D&I website. I'm pretty sure she did, because I think I saw the link. I don't know. I didn't click on the link, so I don't know if it's live, but I'm pretty sure it is. Encourage you to go ahead and take a look, because it'll actually give you a breakdown meeting by meeting what we went through. And we were able to fly through this and do it actually impressively so. And there's much more we can dig into that. But out of that came 5 stages in terms of launch. The first stage was to identify somebody that could lead this. And this is targeted primarily at inclusivity here, or belonging, which can stretch beyond just the people that are disadvantaged within a population. Finding somebody to steward and lead that, and I'm very happy to say here, because it is now public, that Professor Edgar Arriaga agreed to step in and lead that as part of this initiative that we started calling what we call a Dean's Fellow program. So Edgar is a second Dean's Fellow. We have one that is doing professional development for students and for faculty. And so those are 2 Dean's Fellows that we're running. Additionally, trying to work with, so first thing was find the person, and we're trying to find the staff support to go ahead and support them, working that. The second piece is the communication piece. The third piece is the instrumentations that we will use, like we were talking about in a Gartner Inclusivity Index. We need to have instruments that we can actually use to determine where things are going well and what we need to keep and where things need to be adjusted so we can fine tune. And there's a bunch of others, and I know I'm running short on time here, but that is one of the things that we're doing. It will be a continued effort that we need to make over many, many years. I'm super excited about it because it's taking a very engineering approach to an organizational problem. And I think it will become a model as we go forward for many other schools to follow. With that, let me just say I thank you very much for your efforts. Look forward to working with you, because I believe part of the effort on this what was called mission inclusion. I don't know if we can call it mission inclusion anymore. It was sort of a play on words for Mission Impossible, because people said you can't do a plan with a bunch of professors in 7 meetings. That's just never going to happen. I think there's some trademark issues. So yeah, I've been burned before doing this. So I think we can't call it that anymore. Otherwise we'll have to start paying royalties. So we're gonna have to come up with a different name for it. But part of that, the alliance, I think, is going to be very, very key for that step 2, if you read through the plan, in terms of partnering and socializing and messaging why this is in everybody's best interest to improve that sense of belonging across the entire college, not just for those who are underrepresented or disadvantaged. And with that, I will thank you and turn it back over to Orla.
Thank you so much for being with us today, Dean Aline, and giving us some of your perspective and thoughts. With that, I will resume sharing my screen. And I'm going to give some updates on the different action teams in the Alliance. So first, an update from the communications team. The communications team supports the communication needs of the Alliance and DEI efforts in the college in general. Recent accomplishments include refreshing our website, holding trainings on digital accessibility and ethical storytelling, formalizing a process for the bi-weekly Alliance updates. And if you are not currently getting those updates, at the end of this, we'll have a link to our website where you can sign up to be a champion and get those updates. We highlighted BIPOC student voices and provided communication support to other Alliance action teams. For this next year, the goal of the communications team is to help provide strategies and tactics to increase the number of Alliance champions, keep growing our community, and bridge DEI efforts between the Alliance and the Dean's Initiative, as Aline was just mentioning. Next, our educational and professional development team explores DEI educational and professional opportunities for all members of the CSE community. Recent accomplishments include coordinating opportunities for faculty, staff, and graduate students to audit the Go for Equity project here at the university. The team hosted an implicit bias and microaggression workshop and continued to create diversity and inclusivity moments, adding to that bank of slides that is accessible to everyone in the college. For 2022 to 2023, they have identified and implemented metrics for measuring effectiveness of educational and professional development activities, are going to try to implement TA training or grad student orientation that includes OED content, and broadly share diversity and inclusivity moments across the college via that new website, really trying to expand the reach of those DEI moments. I'm going to try to get rid of this cat if I can. There we go. The faculty, staff, and postdoc team works to support, he's already back, works to support DEI programs and initiatives for non-student members of the college. Recent accomplishments include the Presidential Postdoctoral Fellowship Program, which now has a cohort of 6 individuals, 4 from this year and 2 from 2021. Last spring, the action team also introduced staff awards for DEI engagement across the college. 1 postdoc and 2 staff winners were announced at the DEI Leadership Showcase that Dean Aline alluded to in his talk. For this next year, they're going to continue working on staff awards and work with human resources on DEI in hiring. The Student Experience Group works on DEI initiatives that affect undergraduate and graduate students within the college. This team prioritizes student-led initiatives and maintaining strong relationships with existing student organizations. The recent accomplishments include organizing and hosting the first end-of-year DEI Student Leadership Showcase in the spring of 2022. This is where Michelle was recognized and where the dean was able, the dean mentioned in his speech as well. This is also where the postdoc and faculty were recognized from the previous slide. We also surveyed the different reporting systems within the university to spread awareness among CSE members and hosted town halls to connect students with the dean. For this next year, the Student Experience Group would like to foster and nourish the relationship with other student groups within the college, share content about identifying micro and macro aggressions and how to respond to them, and consolidate and centralize DEI efforts among the different groups within department, looking to bring the efforts of departmental committees, student groups, alliance working teams, and others all together. As I mentioned earlier, we have a new website. Our website is csc.umn.edu/alliance. The website has had a complete refresh this year with Ellen doing a lot of work to make it functional and beautiful. As you can see from this screenshot, the DEI moments are front and center, so you'll be able to get access to those. And it has different areas around resources, getting involved, and events as well. With that, what can you do? If you're not part of the Alliance, you can join the Alliance. And if you are part of the Alliance and would like to get more involved, you can express interest in an action team as well.